gamification and why it's amazing and why you should use it and what it means to me, you can implement this. You can implement gamification anywhere you find difficulty, where people don't grasp an idea, have difficulty understanding, have resistance to things. Gamification is really your opportunity to also make it fun for yourself. In this 4-part series, I launch my social design studio, Forge of Foundations, from scratch, a place where I design, prototype, and test ideas that help people grow emotionally, creatively, and spiritually. Here, I use my own frameworks that mix design thinking, psychology, and gamification. I'm starting over, using my own method to go from zero to hero in my own practice and show you exactly how I do it step by step. Hey y'all, welcome back. To episode number 3. Today's episode is all about gamification, and more importantly, the difference between gamifying ideas and using real game mechanics as a creative practice. There is a big distinction here, and it is one that changed how I design, how I think, and how I come up with social and emotional concepts in my work. Gamifying theory is when you take something complicated like psychology, systems thinking, emotional patterns, or whatever, and make it approachable, relatable, and memorable. It's turning abstract theory into something you can play with. And then you have practicing game mechanics. It's experimenting with rules, feedback loops, constraint, chance, roles, and narrative structure to expand your perspective. It's not just making something fun, it's training your brain to problem solve differently. This is actually how I generate most of my social concepts and design ideas. I start with a mechanic, not meaning. And sometimes it starts in the weirdest places. For example, I recently got some Pokemon cards because I'm addicted to this guy who opens Pokemon cards, and then the jingle goes, do I open it or do I keep it sealed? And then he basically shows you if he drew something nice. So basically, not because I suddenly decided to become a competitive trainer at 35, although honestly, never say never, but because I jokingly turned them into an oracle, because I thought these Pokemon cards actually sometimes have metaphorical kind of powers, or powers that you can see as metaphors. And then something clicked. I realized you could use the structure of Pokemon, the creatures and the stats and the types and the strengths and weaknesses to explore emotional behaviors. Instead of choosing a cute creature, you could choose something like the Withdrawer or the Overgiver or the Ghoster or the Hyper-Adapter. You're not going to battle with them. You're going to navigate impairments and triggers, the actions they can take or cannot take because of them. And so, a board game becomes a metaphorical space where you can play what it feels like to deal with depression, addiction, avoidant tendencies, or sociopathy without pathologizing, but with structure, distance, and curiosity. And that's where the magic happens. Because when you interact with patterns through mechanics, not judgment, your brain learns differently. This is the same reason why family constellations, for example, can be so powerful. The moment you step into something symbolically or even physically, somehow your perspective shifts. You see the pattern instead of believing you are the pattern. And gamification lets us do that with imagination, storytelling, roleplay, dice rolls, and rules. It creates safety, distance, and creativity, and suddenly heavy topics become approachable without losing depth. So, in today's episode, I'm taking you behind the scenes of how I use gamification in my practice, how I build prototypes, how I translate emotional concepts into mechanics, and how I turn systems thinking into something you can hold in your hands and play with, and how playing is sometimes the most serious, insightful thing we can do as adults. Family constellations, but gamified. Family constellations is a therapeutic method where you physically step into symbolic roles, like family members, emotions, or patterns, to understand their relationships and from a new perspective. By positioning and moving through these roles in the space, people often experience insights that thinking alone cannot reach. Family constellations sits within the umbrella of systemic psychology and experiential group therapy. It's positioned at the intersection of systemic family therapy because it focuses on family systems, hidden loyalties, generational trauma, and interconnections between family members, and to phenomenological psychology because you rely on direct experience, bodily sensations, and intuitive movement in the constellation rather than analytical interpretation. And 3, experiential and somatic therapies, because insight emerges from physical positioning, posture, spatial awareness, and movement rather than verbal reasoning. And then last but not least, 4, group dynamic and psychodrama, because participants represent roles, family members, or emotional patterns similar to classical psychodrama, but with less acting and more spatial awareness. It was originally developed by Bert Hellinger, a German psychotherapist in the late 20th century. Why do I use it? Family constellations work because you step into something symbolic. Your body remembers differently than your thoughts do. Gamification does the same thing, but with rules, roles, and mechanics. When you play a pattern instead of being a pattern, your brain disentangles, emotional material becomes symbolic, insight arrives without force, and vulnerability becomes safe. This is why I use gamification in my work. It's not about entertainment, it's about embodied systems thinking through story and approachability. My D&D arena, the rogue-lite that became a practicing tool. Now, I want to show you something special that I made. Outside of the Pokémon experimentation, I also do something much deeper. I built a dungeon crawling, roguelite inspired arena based on the D&D Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Think of it like this. One session is one arena. You fight through and solve the level. You earn upgrades, abilities, and modifiers. You move to the next area with your new build, you make meaningful choices under pressure, you get short rests and long rests and resources only if you earn them, and everything stacks and compounds and becomes a story of adaptation. It is Dungeons & Dragons, but it's also not. It's my own hybrid system that allows me to practice new game mechanics, observe interaction patterns, test difficulty balancing, experiment with reward basing, see how different personalities navigate stress, study group dynamics in real time, and refine my design thinking through play. This arena system, which I really love, became one of my best teachers because every mechanic forces a question. What creates tension? What creates relief? What makes people collaborate? What makes them freeze? What is fun when the stakes feel emotional or stressful? Or what is too punishing? When does empowerment feel earned, and when does it feel unfair? These questions transfer directly into my work as a social designer and kind of emotional and psychological research that comes out of it. Because people behave the same in life as they do in a game. Well, not really, they take more risks, but I think the fundamental psychology and behavior really reflects here, and it can become quite the conversation and the insight for people that are playing these types of stuff. And it's really interesting for both parties, for me as a designer and for the people that I play with, and also for me as the player. in these types of structures. So what does this mean for my professional practice? I gamify because it's one of the clearest ways to build ideas, track emotional dynamics, understand human behavior, study interaction, train creativity, and create frameworks that actually make sense outside of theory. I'm Rowan Barr. I'm your social designer. This was gamification and why it's amazing and why you should use it and what it means to me. But also, you can implement this. You can implement gamification anywhere you find difficulty, where people don't grasp an idea, have difficulty understanding, have resistance to things. Gamification is really your opportunity to also make it fun for yourself and to learn a lot about human behavior and about yourself. Yeah. I'm Rowan Barr, your social designer. Welcome to the Forge. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe. See you next time. Next time is all about my 2-month journey because I made this series in 2 months. I'm showing you what I did, how I did it, where I lacked, where I want to grow, what I underestimated, and actually what went well. Very important. Okay, bye-bye. See ya.